When the news broke that Ace Frehley, the legendary spaceman of Kiss, had passed away at 74, the rock world went dead quiet. For decades, he wasn't just a guitarist, he was the heartbeat of a generation that learned to dream through the sound of a screaming Les Paul. But what shocked fans even more than the loss itself were the words that came afterward, a confession from Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons that nobody saw coming. The same bandmates who once replaced Ace on stage were now calling him irreplaceable. The same voices that helped define Kiss's success were finally giving props to the man who helped build its soul. It wasn't just an apology, it was a reckoning. A quiet, emotional admission that sometimes true greatness only gets recognized after it's gone. But before we uncover what Paul and Gene really revealed, we need to follow the road that led to this moment. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. The final days. The tragedy that changed everything started quietly. No stage lights, no cameras, no fanfare. Just a late-night session inside Ace Frehley's New Jersey studio. According to reports, he slipped, hit his head on equipment, and was rushed to the hospital. What looked like a minor accident turned critical within hours. Doctors discovered a severe brain hemorrhage and performed emergency surgery. For a brief moment, hope flickered. Ace opened his eyes and even managed to smile. But complications soon dragged him back into a coma. For 3 long weeks, his ex-wife Jeanette and daughter Monique stayed right by his side. They played his music softly through speakers, whispered words of love, and prayed he could still hear them. Despite every effort, doctors quietly admitted there was almost no chance of recovery. Friends said Ace had been full of life just days earlier, planning new songs and joking about a psychic who once told him he'd live to be 100. That optimism now felt heartbreakingly prophetic, a final reflection of who he was, bold, funny, and unstoppable. On October 16, 2025, after nearly 3 weeks on life support, the family faced the hardest decision imaginable. Surrounded by love, Ace took his final breath. His 50-year journey through rock history ended not with a final encore, but with silence. AP News confirms Ace Frehley's death, age, and cause, traumatic brain injury following a fall, and provides the factual foundation for this chapter. Yet beyond those hospital walls, something was happening. The band that had once kept its distance from him was preparing a tribute nobody expected. Because even in death, Ace Frehley was still changing the story of Kiss. Paul and Gene's unexpected confessions. When news of Ace Frehley's passing spread, fans expected silence from the Kiss camp. For decades, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons had kept their distance, rarely mentioning Ace and never really calling him a friend. But within hours, both men broke that silence, and what they said left fans stunned. Paul's statement was short, but the tone felt completely different. He called Ace a core part of the first chapter of Kiss, and then used a word nobody expected to hear, irreplaceable. Coming from a man who had always insisted the band was bigger than any one member, that single word felt like an admission of respect, maybe even regret. Gene's tribute was even more straightforward. In a short recording released after a private memorial, he said, "No one could have done what Ace did. We never denied it, and there's no one left to say it better." For someone known for confidence, control, and a larger-than-life ego, that kind of humility hit hard. No press conferences. No big performances. No flashy statements. Just honesty. 2 men finally acknowledging the brother they had lost, and the truth they had buried for years. Then, almost quietly, every Kiss social media profile changed to Ace's iconic 1977 spaceman image. Beneath it were only 2 words. Forever Spaceman. It was the first time in more than 2 decades that Ace stood front and center in Kiss's identity. And in that moment, fans knew something inside Paul and Gene had shifted forever. People magazine provides direct quotes from Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons acknowledging Ace Frehley's legacy, reinforcing the emotional truth behind this section and the title. But to understand just how deep that change went, we need to go back to where it all started. Origins of a legend. Before the fame, the pyrotechnics, and the painted faces that would define an era, there was simply a kid from the Bronx, Paul Daniel Ace Frehley. A quiet dreamer with a wild gift and a guitar that sounded like pure electricity. In 1973, Ace walked into a small New York audition that would change rock history forever. He wore mismatched shoes, a leather jacket, and carried the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself. The second he plugged in his guitar, the room went silent. Years later, Paul Stanley recalled, "I saw this guy walk in like he didn't care, and the moment he played, I thought, I hope he's the one." That was Ace. Unpredictable. Raw. Authentic. From that day forward, the Spaceman was born, one of Kiss's 4 legendary personas. The silver suit. The smoking guitar. The cosmic energy. A lot of it came straight from Ace's imagination. He didn't chase trends. He created them. His sound helped shape Kiss's earliest albums, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, and Destroyer, filling them with danger, attitude, and rebellion. Songs like Cold Gin, Shock Me, and Rocket Ride became his calling cards. Raw. Explosive. Electric. Even among the explosions and over-the-top stage spectacle, Ace's guitar tone cut through everything. Instantly recognizable. Completely alive. Ace wasn't the loudest guy offstage, but under the lights he was magnetic. His riffs didn't feel rehearsed. They felt instinctive. Every note sounded like it came straight from the gut. But as Kiss exploded around the world and became a cultural phenomenon, the unity that once fueled the band started to crack. Fame brought money and success. It also brought pressure, control, and resentment. And while Ace's guitar helped Kiss soar, the harmony behind the scenes was already beginning to disappear. Cracks in the empire. By the mid-1970s, Kiss was on top of the world. Platinum records. Sold-out arenas. Fans painting their faces just to feel connected to the band. But behind all the fireworks and fame, cracks were beginning to show. Ace Frehley, the free spirit who gave Kiss its dangerous edge, was slowly being squeezed by creative control and personal turmoil. Inside Kiss, much of the power belonged to Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. They were the planners. The perfectionists. Ace was the opposite. Pure instinct. Unpredictable. Emotional. And completely allergic to authority. "I'd walk into meetings," he later said, "and everything was already decided." That feeling of not being heard started eating away at him. Then came 1978. To prove they could stand on their own, each member released a solo album. Critics rolled their eyes. Until Ace's record became the only major hit. His single New York Groove climbed the charts and proved the Spaceman could shine without the Kiss brand attached. Instead of bringing the band closer together, success widened the gap. Ace's growing confidence made some people uncomfortable, and the relentless touring lifestyle pushed him closer to burnout. Friends described him as burning bright and burning out. By the early 1980s, the empire that once looked unstoppable was surviving on tension and contracts rather than brotherhood. The magic was fading. In its place came quiet resentment and boardroom decisions. And before long, the man who gave Kiss its spark would become the first one to walk away from the fire. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this deep dive, smash that like button. It helps more rock fans discover stories like this one. The Fall and the Breakaway. By 1982, the inevitable finally happened. After months of tension and creative clashes, Ace Frehley officially left Kiss, the very band he had helped build from smoky clubs into a worldwide phenomenon. There were no huge explosions in the headlines. No dramatic public feuds. Just exhaustion. The band's experimental album, Music from the Elder, had failed, and behind the scenes Ace felt trapped and ignored. Major decisions were being made without him. His voice within Kiss had faded to a whisper. Publicly, he blamed personal reasons. But people close to him knew there was more to the story. Ace felt stuck inside a system that no longer valued what made him special. "You can't stay in a place where every idea gets shut down," he once said. For someone who thrived on spontaneity, that kind of cage was impossible to live in. Leaving wasn't rebellion. It was survival. Soon afterward, Ace launched Frehley's Comet, a solo project that reignited the chaos, creativity, and energy that had always defined him. His guitar roared once again. Wild. Soulful. Unpredictable. Fans loved it. His debut proved that the Spaceman didn't need the mothership to keep shining. Still, the past wouldn't let go. Interviews became sharper. Comments became more pointed. Ace suggested that Paul and Gene were rewriting history and downplaying his role in the Kiss story. Whether that was true or not, the hurt was real. And the divide was complete. Yet legends have gravity. No matter how far Ace drifted, fans, and even his former bandmates, couldn't escape his influence. Because deep down, everyone knew one thing. Kiss without Ace never quite sounded the same. The reunion and the rupture. By the mid-1990s, time had softened some of the anger, but the scars remained. Fans had one dream: to see the original Kiss line up together again. And in 1996, it happened. The impossible became reality. Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Peter Criss. 4 legends standing side by side once more, their makeup shining beneath the lights like it was 1975 all over again. For millions of fans, it felt like rock history had come back to life. The reunion tour became one of the biggest successes of the decade. Fans cried. Critics applauded. And for one glorious moment, it looked like the magic had returned. On stage, Ace was absolutely on fire. His solos were fierce. His grin was mischievous. His energy was unstoppable. But behind the spectacle, the same old cracks started opening up again. Kiss had become more corporation than band. Contracts, branding, image control, and financial oversight dictated nearly everything. For Ace, that environment felt suffocating. "I'm not a soldier," he said. "I didn't sign up to be watched every day." The reunion slowly transformed from celebration into frustration. Every costume, every interview, every guitar solo, everything had to fit the plan. By 2002, after the farewell tour, Ace was done. For real this time. Paul claimed Ace lacked commitment. Gene argued he couldn't handle the pressure. But Ace told a different story, one filled with mistrust and creative suffocation. Whatever the truth was, that final goodbye marked the end of an era. The 4 original members would never share a stage again. And as the lights faded, fans were left asking the same painful question. How could something so legendary fall apart twice? Because in the world of Kiss, a reunion was never closure. It was just another storm. Trademark wars and bitterness. After Ace Frehley's second departure, Kiss kept touring. The fire was still there. The music was still loud. But something felt off. Fans could sense it. The silver-suited spaceman was back on stage. Only this time, it wasn't Ace. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons decided that the character could continue living on, even if somebody else was wearing the costume. To Ace, that decision hit hard. It cut deep. The spaceman wasn't just a look, it was him, a reflection of his imagination, his alter ego, his legacy. Seeing another guitarist perform under that mask felt like wiping out a piece of his soul. "I created that character," he said. "They can't just slap a new face on something that came from me." But legally, Kiss owned the trademarks. The makeup, the logos, the imagery, they belonged to the brand, not the guys who invented them. The whole thing got personal. Paul and Gene insisted Kiss was bigger than any one person, while Ace saw it as a straight-up betrayal. Fans were split right down the middle. Some rolled with the continuation, while others flat out refused to recognize a Kiss without its original spaceman. For years, interviews turned into proxy wars. Whenever someone asked if he'd ever return, Ace would smirk and say, "Not unless they stop treating me like an outsider." The tension never really disappeared. If anything, time made the silence feel even heavier. Yet through every show, every album, every rebranded tour, one truth stuck around. Nobody could recreate Ace's reckless magic. He wasn't the cleanest, fastest, or most disciplined guitarist. But he was real. His sound carried emotion, danger, and soul, the exact ingredients that built Kiss in the first place. And even as the bitterness lingered, fate was quietly setting up one final encore, one that would bring their story full circle. It would arrive the night Kiss entered the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame moment. When Kiss was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014, fans expected the perfect ending. The original 4 reunited one last time, dropping decades of tension and walking away together. Instead of a fairy tale celebration, the night became a reminder of just how deep those scars still ran. Ace Frehley showed up alone, sharp suit, calm smile, quiet confidence. He posed for photos but refused to perform. When reporters asked why, his answer hit harder than any guitar solo. "I don't need to stand next to people who once called me useless to get a title I've already earned." It was raw, unapologetic, and pure Ace. Paul Stanley avoided a direct response, while Gene Simmons offered a carefully crafted statement. "We respect what Ace contributed, but we have the right to move on." For longtime fans, those words stung. The reunion they had dreamed about disappeared in a cloud of polite distance. But when Ace stepped onto that stage to accept his award, the crowd absolutely exploded. "Spaceman! Spaceman!" The chants echoed throughout the auditorium. For a brief moment, Paul and Gene turned toward him, not with anger, but with quiet acknowledgement. They knew exactly who the audience was cheering for. The induction wasn't a reunion, it was a reckoning. A reminder that Kiss's power wasn't in its brand or business. It was in the chemistry of four flawed, fearless men who built something timeless together. The night ended without a handshake, but something had shifted. Pride gave way to reflection. Because sometimes, respect doesn't start with forgiveness, it starts with silence. Quick reminder. Don't go anywhere, there's more coming that'll completely change how you see Kiss forever. And hey, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Quiet Regrets and the 2024 podcast. As the years passed, the noise faded, and so did much of the bitterness. By 2024, something had changed. In interviews and podcasts, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons started talking about Ace Frehley differently, not as a problem, but as a missing piece of their story. It started quietly. In a podcast that went viral that spring, Paul sounded surprisingly reflective. "I don't know if it's worth holding on to something that's been unpleasant for so long," he said softly. "We shared something powerful once. Maybe that's what matters most." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it came pretty close, the kind of honesty that only shows up after years of distance. Gene, usually the louder voice in the room, spoke less but somehow said more. When asked about Ace later that year, he replied, "There's only one Ace Frehley. You can't copy what's real." Coming from the guy who once defended replacing him, those words carried serious weight. Fans immediately started asking the big question. Was a reunion finally possible? Could the founders of Kiss finally be ready to heal old wounds? Ace's response, however, was bittersweet. He thanked them for their words but stayed grounded. Some things are better left as memories. For the first time in decades, hostility gave way to humility. The coldness between them softened into quiet respect. And none of them could have known that those gentle reflections, those unspoken acknowledgements of what once was, would become their final words on the subject. Because when the music stopped, that's when the truth finally started playing. The legacy restored. When news of Ace Frehley's passing broke in October 2025, it didn't just mark the end of a life, it closed an entire chapter of rock history. For decades, the name Kiss had symbolized spectacle and fire. But now, suddenly, the flames seemed to dim, replaced by something unfamiliar. Silence. And in that silence, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons did something nobody saw coming. They gave Ace back his legacy. Within hours, all official Kiss social media accounts switched their profile pictures to Ace's iconic 1977 spaceman portrait. The band's website turned completely black, with only two words glowing in silver letters. Forever Spaceman. Fans around the world felt the weight of that tribute. It wasn't marketing. It was mourning. Behind the scenes, both Paul and Gene instructed their media team to restore Ace's performances across all digital platforms. Old videos, interviews, and live recordings that had been buried for years suddenly resurfaced. Internal memos reportedly revealed Paul's message. Everything related to Ace must be treated with respect. No cuts. No replacements. Even Gene, who had always viewed Kiss as a business first, quietly approved the move. He earned this, he reportedly said during a private meeting. For the first time in decades, all members of Kiss, living and gone, stood as equals in the band's official archives. It wasn't an apology. It was something deeper. A restoration. The kind of gesture that didn't need words to be understood. Ace had always been the rebel, the heartbeat that never followed the rhythm. And now, at last, that rhythm was finally being honored. The spaceman's story had come full circle, not through sound or spectacle, but through silence and respect. Because even legends need peace before they fade into the stars. This blabbermouth.net compilation includes detailed statements from Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and Peter Criss, confirming their public tributes and emotional reflections, reinforcing this legacy-restored chapter. What Ace meant to rock. Ace Frehley wasn't just a guitarist. He was a force of nature. To his fans, he represented something bigger than fame or technique. He was freedom, chaos, authenticity, proof that rock music didn't need perfection to be powerful. His playing wasn't about flawless precision. It was about feel. The kind of sound that could make your heart pound even when a note bent a little too far or a solo went completely off script. From the smoky bars of the Bronx to the biggest stages on Earth, Ace carried a raw energy that never disappeared. He didn't move like a rock star. He moved like a man possessed by sound. When he leaned his head back and unleashed those riffs beneath blue and purple lights, the whole room seemed to transform. That's why generations of musicians, from Mike McCready to John 5, point to Ace as their first spark, the reason they picked up a guitar in the first place. He made imperfection beautiful. He made rebellion look easy. And even when he stumbled, personally or professionally, he did it with the same defiant grin that seemed to say, "I'm still here." To his fans, Ace wasn't just the spaceman. He was every dreamer who ever felt out of place but found a voice through music. He showed people that you didn't have to follow the rules to make history. You just needed the courage to be yourself, even when the world wanted you to fit the mold. And in the end, that's exactly why his story matters. Because Ace Frehley didn't just play guitar. He reminded us that rock and roll is about being alive, loud, and fearless. And though the man is gone, the spaceman still shines every time a guitar roars into the night. Conclusion: forever spaceman. In the end, Ace Frehley's story wasn't about fame or feuds. It was about legacy. He started as an outsider, rose to become a rock icon, crashed hard, and somehow managed to keep his spirit untouched. Through every rift, every silence, and every comeback, he proved one thing. You can't replace authenticity. When Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons finally called him irreplaceable, it wasn't just a tribute. It was an admission. The magic of Kiss started with him. The riffs, the makeup, the swagger, all of it came from a man who never cared about fitting in, only about being real. Ace didn't just play music. He was music. Unpredictable, imperfect, unforgettable. And now, his legend belongs to eternity. Because while the lights may fade and the amps may quiet, the spaceman's echo still lives on in every chord, every stage, every fan who ever believed in rock's untamed heart. Subscribe now for more stories behind rock's most unforgettable legends.